Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's pretty focused. We're digging into a stack of sources that really challenge how we think about long-term success.
Especially in these large-scale, really passionate efforts.
Exactly. So if you're, prepping for a meeting, rethinking your strategy, or just curious why some big ideas last and others just vanish,
Yeah.
this is for you.
And the central claim we found is it's incredibly counterintuitive. We tend to think the biggest threat to a mission or a company is external,
Right, like bad press, competition, funding cuts.
all that. But these sources are arguing the real enemy is, well, it's internal. It's our own fractured systems and a deep misunderstanding of what actually makes something resilient.
That's it. We're deep diving into resilience today. And for you listening, we're really trying to unpack this critical vulnerability that seems to pop up in a lot of modern efforts.
It's this trade-off that happens. We sacrifice resilience for speed, for what looks like efficiency.
So today, we're going to define and really dissect what the sources are calling the missional ecosystem and why its survival seems to depend entirely on three pillars.
Three integrated, non-negotiable pillars: interdependence, prayer, and power.
And this isn't just about one sector. The sources show this pattern of failure and this architecture for survival showing up everywhere. It's about how to not just start something, but how to sustain it.
For generations, really.
Okay, so let's start with this paradox you mentioned, because on the surface, a lot of modern movements look incredibly strong.
Oh, absolutely. They have huge budgets, instant global communication.
Sophisticated strategy models, massive social media presence. I mean, they look like they're winning.
But when you actually look under the hood, you find this systemic crisis. The sources are pointing to just staggering rates of burnout.
What are the numbers like?
Some estimates put attrition among the most committed people, the field workers, at 50 to 70%.
50 to 70, wow.
Yeah. And you see these initiatives that they shoot up like rockets and then they fall just as fast. The sources have a name for this gap between how strong things look and how fragile they really are.
What is it?
They call it the illusion of strength.
The illusion of strength. So you're telling me that all this momentum we see, the huge conferences, the slick apps, the global reach, it might just be a house of cards.
It's not cynical. It's more of a diagnosis. The illusion is defined by speed without roots.
Speed without roots.
Exactly. The proof is in the longevity, or, the lack of it. When a movement is built just for instant results, it's always going to struggle with keeping people and making deep, lasting change. The first big storm that comes along, there's just nothing holding it all together.
And what's so fascinating is the diagnosis of why it's so fragile. Because my first thought, and I think most people's, would be to blame the leaders.
Bad leadership, yeah. Or a bad funding model.
Or maybe they just didn't have the right talent.
And that's the classic misdiagnosis. The sources are really compelling on this point. It's not a leadership problem or a money problem on its own. It's fundamentally an ecosystem problem.
An ecosystem problem.
Yeah, don't think of it as one broken part. Think of it as a whole system that's out of balance, like a rainforest, The tiny decomposers on the forest floor are just as vital as the giant trees. When that balance is gone, the whole thing becomes fragile.
And this imbalance, it seems to tie directly back to something the sources call the hero narrative.
This is the real distortion. It's this subtle but incredibly destructive story we tell ourselves.
Walk us through how that breaks the structure down.
Okay, so the hero narrative creates this unconscious hierarchy. We've specialized all the roles so much that we've broken the connections between them. Let's just define the roles like the sources do. First, you have the goers. These are the frontline people, the field workers. And they get celebrated as these, spiritual elites. The success or failure of the whole mission gets put on their shoulders.
And they end up carrying this weight they were never, ever meant to carry alone. I'm picturing that glossy farewell video for the one person going off to do the important work.
Exactly. And by putting the goer on that pedestal, everyone else is unintentionally, diminished. The senders, the people providing the money and logistics, they get sidelined.
They just become a line item on a budget, a monthly withdrawal.
Right. Their contribution feels transactional, not relational. They feel invisible. And then you have the intercessors, the people committed to prayer. They're laboring unseen, which means their work becomes peripheral. It's a side meeting, not the foundation.
Which leads to the biggest casualty of all, according to the sources.
The local church itself, it gets reduced to just a funding mechanism.
An ATM for the mission.
An ATM for the mission instead of what it's supposed to be. The primary environment of formation. The greenhouse, where people are grown, not just a bank where checks are written.
It really feels like we've accidentally taken a modern corporate org chart and slapped it onto something that was always meant to be, I don't know, a community.
That's precisely the distortion. The biblical pattern has no hierarchy of spiritual prestige. Paul's analogy of the body in 1 Corinthians 12, the sources say we treat that like a nice sentimental metaphor.
But it's not.
No, it's a structural blueprint. When you isolate the parts, when you break that interdependence, the body doesn't just function poorly, it actively suffers. The part that feels unnecessary is, in fact, indispensable.
Okay, so that brings us to the solution, the cure for this disease of isolation, interdependence. But I want to push on this a little. Why is this framed as a theological necessity? Why isn't it just a pragmatic tweak, better HR practices or project management?
Because the mission itself, in its deepest sense, flows directly from the relational life of God.
The Trinity.
The Trinity. The sources point to Genesis 1.26, let us make humanity in our image. That us is everything. It's a declaration that God's work in the world flows from a communal, relational life. The persons of the Trinity never act in total isolation.
So if God operates in communion, then any effort to join God's mission has to reflect that same pattern. It has to be relational.
It has to be. And you see this pattern all through Jesus' ministry. He didn't just recruit 12 hyper-talented individual agents. He formed them as a community. He sent them out together in pairs.
The formation was communal, so the work could be communal.
Right. And even Paul, who we often think of as the ultimate solo hero, his work was completely dependent on what the Greeks called koinonia.
Partnership, fellowship.
Shared life. He needed the churches that prayed for him, that supported him. He needed Timothy, Titus, Silas. His work was tied by a relational tether back to these communities. It wasn't just his individual charisma.
So isolating the gur isn't just inefficient, it's actually a theological contradiction?
It is. And like we said, the biggest casualty of this broken model is often the local church itself. When it's only sending funds, it loses its core identity as a shaper of people.
It's transactional instead of relational.
And longevity, real endurance, depends entirely on formation before deployment. We have to see the local church as that formative greenhouse. The sources use the example from Acts 13.
The church at Antioch.
Yes. That church didn't just spot talent and write a check. It cultivated leaders, Barnabas and Saul, through shared worship, teaching, prayer, before sending them. So the sending itself was relational, not transactional.
That's a powerful picture. Are we sending a high-performance product that we ship overseas? Or are we sending a beloved family member who knows they have a home base to come back to?
It changes everything. The community owns the failures just as much as it owns the successes. No one is left to carry that weight by themselves.
Which is a beautiful transition to the second pillar of this ecosystem, prayer. The sources use this image that really stuck with me. They say prayer is not the decorative element of mission.
Not the flower arrangement in the lobby.
No, it is its power grid.
It's the engine, the actual source of energy. And this is where that tension between speed and discernment really comes to a head. The sources are so clear about what happens when you detach prayer from the actual structures of the mission.
What happens?
Activity accelerates, but discernment just plummets.
Yeah.
You get very busy, very impressive-looking programs that are running purely on human strategy and human energy.
And eventually, human energy runs out.
Every single time. Prayer is what recenters the whole ecosystem on divine agency. It's this act of humility that reminds everyone, from the goer to the CEO, that this isn't something we accomplish for God.
It's something we join with God.
We're participants, not the architects.
Yeah.
We often treat prayer like an emergency brake, right? Something we grab when the crisis hits.
Or when the funding dries up.
And that's exactly why these systems fail. If prayer is only for emergencies, it's not the foundation. Look at the early church, Acts 1.14. They are devoted to prayer before anything happens.
It was their default operating system.
That's it. Major decisions, commissioning leaders, responding to a crisis. It was all soaked in collective prayer and fasting. It was the work itself.
If organizations today actually treated prayer as the work, if they dedicated as much calendar time to communal prayer as they did to strategic planning, that would change everything.
It would rebalance the entire ecosystem. And that's what connects prayer directly to resilience, to longevity. Movements that are grounded in prayer will always outlast those driven by programs alone. When prayer is the engine, the system grows roots.
Which brings us back to that parable Jesus told in Mark chapter 4.
Yes, the seed sown on rocky ground. It springs up fast, it looks great for a minute, but because it has no root, the minute the heat comes, it withers.
And the fragile systems are that rocky ground.
They are. They're built for speed, without the deep, slow work of prayer. They can't endure the heat.
Okay, so we have interdependence, built on a theology of community. We have prayer, the power grid. Let's tackle this third pillar, power. When we hear missional power, I think our minds go to a charismatic leader, a massive crowd, $1 billion endowment. What do the sources say true power actually looks like?
It's not about size or charisma at all. True power, they argue, flows through alignment.
Alignment. Alignment with what?
Alignment with God's nature, with God's purposes, and with God's people. It's the essential context for the endurance we keep talking about.
So how does misalignment show up, practically speaking?
Misalignment is when your system is structured to manage activity. You're measuring how many people you reached, how fast you grew,
All the metrics.
all the metrics. You're not structured to cultivate resilience, so you end up mirroring a corporate hierarchy with its silos and its need for top-down control, instead of reflecting biblical theology, which is all about patience and shared life and the messiness of real community.
So if a system is really tightly structured for control, it's probably fragile, even if it looks successful right now.
Yes, because it's choosing control over community. The sources have this phrase for it: fire without roots cannot last. Fragile systems are designed for the launch, not for the legacy.
And alignment means every part of that ecosystem, the goers, the senders, the intercessors, is working the way it was designed.
And drawing on the power grid of prayer, absolutely. And this is what leads to the ultimate goal of the whole missional ecosystem, honoring every single role.
Not just the spiritual ones.
Not at all. It honors the goer, the sender, the intercessor, but also the mentors, the coaches, and this is critical, the marketplace leaders.
This is where that false wall between sacred and secular just comes crumbling down.
It has to. The idea that ministry is just for a few specialists is structurally destructive. When the ecosystem is aligned, it recognizes that all vocations are essential. The person in finance managing the budget isn't a secondary helper. They are a vital part of the mission.
It makes the whole thing feel so much more accessible. It's not just for a few elite heroes, it's a redistribution of the responsibility.
It's about shared obedience.
Yeah.
And the outcome is clear. Movements rooted in this kind of interdependence, prayer, and alignment simply outlast those driven by charisma. The whole metric for success has to shift.
From short-term performance
Did we hit our quarterly goal?
to enduring faithfulness.
Right. Did we build something that will still be bearing fruit in 20 years, long after we're gone?
That brings us full circle. This deep dive isn't a call for less passion, not at all. It's a call for a deeper, more intentional way of doing things.
The invitation is for the church, really, to exchange admiration for ownership.
And heroism for shared obedience.
Exactly. The fragility is real, but it's not irreversible. The sources argue God has already given us the blueprints for endurance. It's this praying, interdependent body where no one has to carry the weight alone.
So if you're listening to this and you're leading something or funding something or just part of something, this is the framework for longevity.
It is, and that's a core takeaway. So here's the final thought, the challenge for you. If movements really do thrive, where no one stands alone, what's one ordinary act of obedience you could do this week? Something small to intentionally embed in your own network to shift that burden from a fragile hero to a resilient community.
It could be mentoring someone. It could be dedicated prayer.
It could be just offering some relational support. It won't be glamorous.
Yeah.
But that small, ordinary act, that is how extraordinary, enduring impact actually begins.